Sweet Christmas.
Shout out to my birds.
Hello, hello, hello. This is Che.
This is Cory.
And this is the Next Time on Podcast, a podcast where two lifelong friends discuss all things amazing and all things fetid in popular culture. It'd be like if instead of forming the most disappointing super team in the history of sports, Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving had started the most successful podcast in the history of nerddom. Is that fair, Cory?
Yeah, but I'm also an anti-vaxxer, so, you know. Just kidding. That is not even... That's not even a joke, no.
It's not even... The thing that's
not
terrifying
funny.
about Kyrie is that the anti-vaxxer isn't... Like, I think anti-vaxxers are fucking insane people.
Well, absolutely, yeah.
And should be, like, shuttled off to an island somewhere and never heard from again. But at least I sort of understand what's going on in their brain. I can't have a conversation with somebody who thinks the earth is flat.
No, I can't either. It's just fucking... It's so stupid.
But, like, he's now done the thing where he's like, oh, well, I just want people to think about it. What the fuck does that mean, Kyrie? He's such a clown. I know they're your neighborhood team. I mean, you're not like a Brooklyn fan or anything. Do I hate them motherfuckers.
It's kind of like one of those things where, like, the Wizards fucking suck. So... And I get to wherever, and like they literally are 20 minutes away from me, so I did get a chance to see a couple Nets games. I've never seen Kyrie Irving play in person. I don't actually know if he's a real person or not, honestly. I think it just might be a myth perpetuated by the NBA.
Of all the things that really are negative reflections on Kevin Durant's personality, I think the thing that has made me lose the most amount of respect for him is how much he seems to like Kyrie as a person. They're like genuinely best friends, which is very worrying.
That's very concerning. Yeah, no, I wouldn't.
And having to watch Brooklyn play Boston was a real tumultuous series for me because I hate both of those teams with all of my soul. I didn't really know who I wanted to win, but either of the outcomes would have been funny. The Nets getting swept off the court is fucking hilarious, though.
I think it's probably the funniest option. Even though out of the East, I probably was rooting for them the most, and now I'm just like, fuck it, who gives a shit?
I'm still an Embiid boy. I love Embiid, even though I'm not like a Harden fan, but
I just can't root for the city of Philadelphia. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I feel you.
I mean, I like Giannis in the East. I mean, but they're probably going to lose to Boston, so you never know. Yeah. Let's not talk about sports anymore. Let's talk about real things. Let's want to talk about the draft, honestly. The NFL draft.
Cory, you know how detached I am from football.
You know
I for a second thought you were talking about the military draft. And I was what do you want me to say about the military draft, Cory?
You keep throwing these random ass soccer teams at me, and I'm just like, I don't fucking know what the fuck you're talking about. So
is the draft this week?
The draft's today, the day that we're recording. Like
who's going first?
Me.
This is news to me.
Yeah, I agreed.
This is big news for the Next Time on Podcast.
We do have a lot to talk about.
Today we're going to be talking about...
I could not imagine this is your first episode being like, what the fuck are they talking about?
Honestly, this is a great introduction to... If this is the first time you've ever heard Next Time on Podcast, this is pretty much what it's like.
At this point, are we just entertainment podcast?
That's the thing. I kind of hate this is behind the scenes bullshit that nobody listeners don't care about. When you select your podcast, like when you choose the RSS feed to upload it somewhere, you have to choose a category that's pretty narrow. I think we're currently still under TV and movies because there is no comic books category.
I think it's either TV, movies, or pop culture.
Yeah. That's one of the two. There is a books category, but that would seem like a lie.
Not
like we're not
that's
a books.
Lie. We sometimes don't even talk about comics, honestly.
Yeah. Sometimes we don't talk about TV and movies either, though. But today we will be talking about actually a lot of TV and movies. We're going to be talking about the very, very quick birth and death of CNN Plus and what it means for streaming as a whole. We'll be talking about the new, I think, pretty exciting first episode of The Man Who Fell to Earth, the new Showtime show starring Naomi Harris and Chiwetel Ejiofor. We're talking about two comic books, one that's completed, The Good Asian by Pornsak Pichetshote, and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, The Last Ronin, which is 4 issues in.
Five issues. It just ended actually as well.
So two finished ones.
Yeah, 2 finished books.
I didn't realize that was the end. I guess.
Yeah.
I guess that makes sense.
We'll talk about it.
And then we'll be talking about the penultimate episode of Moon Knight. So it's like Cory said, we got a jam-packed episode, which of course is why we started with 4 minutes of talk about the Brooklyn Nets and the Boston Celtics. But before we get into the meat of it, of course, some points of business. As usual, if you have not already, please go rate us 5 stars. We're on all the podcast platforms. I mean, literally wherever you're listening to us right now, you can probably rate us. But if you're on Spotify or iTunes, those are the most helpful. Really helps people discover us. You can also follow us at Next Time on Pod on other social media platforms. Although I would love to boycott Twitter because Elon Musk bought it, and also because I hate going on Twitter and don't want to have to do it.
It's so funny to me. I'm like, I was hoping for the death of this social media. Then I'm like, I just don't give a shit about it. But then and then I'm like, oh, do we have to advertise on TikTok now? And I'm like, we're just never gonna get that crowd.
I cannot fathom what a Next Time on TikTok would look like.
I think it's just me staring at a camera for about 20 seconds with some sad ass song.
There probably is like a comic book TikTok, right? There's a segment of the.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just I don't have the energy, nor do I like people enough to even do that.
I'm too old for TikTok.
I think so too. Hey, what you got going?
You can also follow us at Next Time on nexttimeon.net, where we have all of our archive writing, all of our podcasts, all that good stuff. And coming up, not next episode, because next episode we're going to be talking about Doctor Strange and the finale of Moon Knight. But the episode after that, we will finally, despite Cory's protest, we will be doing our Curse of the Rewatch for Bulletproof Monk.
Whoopee.
And if you did not catch the last episode, we did our Moon Knight book club, the Jeff Lemire run, the 14 issues that he did. So next month's book club, we did Cory's #1 book from last year, Far Sector by N.K. Jemisin. You can check that out in the archives of the podcast. Next month, we'll be doing my #1 book from last year, which was Monsters by Barry Windsor Smith. I think couldn't really be more different books, but 2 equally fantastic comic books. So
excited for that one. I haven't got a chance to get to that one yet. So I'm happy that I'm now being like obligated into reading it.
I think it'll be a good discussion. But yeah, like Cory said, we got a jam-packed one. So let's jump into it. First up, we're gonna do my elevator pitch, and
do it.
I'm gonna put a minute on the clock, and go. So the thing I'm talking about today is like a catalyst for the fact that TV is like better than it's ever been at the moment, I think. The show is an Apple Plus show, which it looked for a while like Apple Plus was going to be another one of the laughable streaming platforms that we had. But it turns out they've released a lot of good stuff. Obviously, they won Best Picture with Coda, and they have We Crash, which I can't stand. But they also have Severance, which is this fantastic sci-fi show about basically the general concept is like, in this world of late stage capitalism, you can separate your memories when you're in the office and when you're out of the office, and it builds this world around these characters that is so incredible. Stars Adam Scott, Britt Lauer, Patricia Arquette, and Christopher Walken, John Turturro. It's just great to watch. If you have access to Apple Plus, you should definitely watch it.
Is it finally time that Apple Plus is actually getting good television shows? Is it finally the time?
It's not. The thing is, as an Android boy, as you know, I'm not a big fan of the Apple Goliath. I'm also not like the kind of person, like, I don't really get people who get super into this like corporate battle, like Xbox versus PlayStation or Android versus Apple,
Marvel,
DC versus Marvel, all this shit. Like, you're all arguing about billionaires. It's really silly.
It's
the
very
thing that
funny though
I don't love about Apple is kind of the same thing I don't love about Prime or Netflix, is that they don't really have the same rule. They don't have to play by the same rules as anybody else. They have so much money, which has been evident by the tons of failed shows starring huge names they've had up until now. They basically, and I know this will hurt a lot of people's feelings who loved Coda, they bought themselves a Best Picture Oscar. The fact that Apple has an Oscar before Netflix is hilarious in a lot of ways. As somebody who's not like a Netflix fan, the fact that Roma didn't win, which is an infinitely better movie, but Coda did, in like a really, like, I think 2 very parallel awards. Like Green Book, which beat out Roma, is in a lot of ways very similar to Coda. It's a very feel-good movie that I think a lot of people, we don't need to go into the ins and outs of like the ranked voting system and why that probably is why Coda and Green Book won. along with the fact that Apple's cut huge checks. But it is no denying that Severance is incredible. It's no denying that Slow Horses, which I think Corey, when I force him to watch that, we'll get a chance to talk about that. That show is.
I think Severance is current. My current list is Tokyo Vice, and then Severance, and then Slow Horses. I have to do this to myself now because if I don't do that, I'm gonna be like, "What the fuck am I watching?" And then I'm just gonna be like,
it happens to me too.
Like, it's like a fucking list, guys. Let me just write it down now.
I just want to run down very quickly. Like I said,
Tokyo Vice.
I think so. If you had asked me, sort of any year of my life until maybe very recently, like these last couple months, if you had to pick movies or TV, which one you want to watch for the rest of time, it would always have been movies. It wouldn't even have been that difficult decision. There's a lot of TV shows I absolutely love. Some of them plastered on the wall behind me, but I just prefer movies in a lot of ways. They're very different things, obviously. For example, The Northman would have made a terrible TV show, but on the other hand, Atlanta would make a really bad movie.
Makes sense.
They tell very different stories, but this is not even a complete list, but a very quick rundown of the shows I'm currently watching or very recently watched that have been incredible. Severance, The Outlaws, The Flight Attendant, Made for Love, Under the Banner of Heaven, Barry, Slow Horses, Atlanta, Tokyo Vice, Winning Time. Just to name a few, we're going to talk about The Man Who Fell to Earth, which I really love the first episode of. TV is just really fucking good right now, which brings us to our first segment, which is about how TV being really fucking good right now is not really good for everybody. Including, I guess, this sort of hangs on, is this like, can we put this on Warner Brothers, Time Warner, or is this do you think this is a CNN problem?
I think it's a combination between the Discovery Warner merger, and the new people coming in. Cause I mean, we also are seeing a lot of shakeups that are happening. With that being with like the recent pause on all scripted content for TNT and TBS development. So that means a lot of shows. I don't really know what that means for like shows like Snowpiercer or anything like that. But
I wonder if that'll move. Maybe
it might move to HBO Max. I know a lot of shows have already I never watched the show Chad, but I think that already is moving to HBO Max.
Yeah.
So I think it might just be kind of like moving
Chad was
around.
good, despite the fact that all the white boys on the internet lost their mind over it. Chad was funny.
But like I think it's a lot of things like kind of being shifted around like that. So who really knows? But I think there are definitely people. Like I mean, it's a whole thing when a new boss comes in, especially money wise in television.
Yeah.
It's a lot of decisions being made. So with the CNN Plus being like pretty much killed faster than Quibi, I think it has to do a lot to do with like one. It's a weird. I don't understand these news networks and now there need to be premium content. I get the whole Fox Nation kind of situation because they have a fucking cult following that. Right. And people are fucking idiots. So, I mean, people do follow that.
And I think that's the biggest difference between, like, obviously the conservatives have been running victory laps this week with Musk buying Twitter, as we already talked about, and the very quick and embarrassing demise of CNN Plus. Not that CNN is a liberal media outlet. Let's be very clear. They're like milquetoast fence sitters.
Which is pretty much. I think that's a lot of it as well because it's like there's not like they don't have enough of a brand loyalty. I think where people are like, I need to go to CNN for my news. Basically.
They're hated by everybody, which is never a place you want to be.
Exactly. So I think it's just, I think that's exactly it. They're hated by everybody. So why would people be like, I need more of this content that for the most part, I don't necessarily like.
Yeah.
I think like CNN has made some good things. I mean, rest in peace to Anthony Bourdain, but like Parts Unknown was a great show and they do some really solid documentaries.
Yeah.
But not
I think the Anthony Bourdain show, which is fucking brilliant if you guys haven't seen it, it is like Anthony Bourdain came to CNN. It was like, because he was in contract with them, it was like, guys, I have a really good idea for a show. I'm gonna make it. And they were like, okay. That wasn't some genius in the CNN boardroom making a decision on interesting content. Like they've stumbled, if they've ever had any success, they've stumbled ass backward into it, really. But I do think this is like sort of indicative of where we are. I think, and this comes in the back of Netflix losing subscribers for the first time in years, reporting a decrease in their overall subscriber count, which basically tanked their stock overnight. I think we've reached peak streaming platforms. There are so many out there. I think when I totaled up the amount that I pay for, and I pay for a lot of them, I don't have all of them. Like I don't have Shudder or some of the smaller ones that I can't really think of off the top of my head. But I pay about $140 a month for all my streaming platforms, which is an untenable thing for basically any human being to do. That's more than most people were paying for like all 6,000 channels in premium cable in a lot of ways. And we've got like, there are the major ones. I think we have really 4 major ones right now. We have Netflix, Disney Plus, Prime, and HBO Max. Now you could include Hulu in there, but Hulu continues to get stripped of content basically because it's under the Disney Plus umbrella.
Yeah.
It's not getting a lot of new originals except for, I guess some people watched, what was it called? The Graduate? No, The Dropout. The opposite of The Graduate.
Sure.
So they get some stuff, which I mean, and I still really like Hulu because it still has the access to next day episodes for a lot of channels,
and I think that's why Hulu
FX shows.
I think it's why Hulu will stay around for a while, specifically because of that. Like I think like that is something that they definitely. And I don't even look at Hulu as being like the original content creators. I think of Hulu as just that, and it's like nice whenever they get something, but. I just know, like, I mean, as you said earlier, like Disney Plus took all their, like, I know for sure this is like television thing. Like they had a big halt on anything kid produced because that went all over to Disney.
Yeah.
So I just kind of think like I think right now it's a very current and strange state for development in television, just because no one really knows what the direction is going next. So I think people are just kind of figuring out what goes best where. And I also think like just as a model for scripted television, I think in a sense it is dying when it comes to like actual cable television, which I mean, part of it makes sense for me at TBS and TNT to stop making produced content, especially as Warner Brothers, because it's like, why don't we just put this on our streaming platforms where people are more likely just to catch that instead of paying for putting it on the air for people to kind of be like, we'll watch it later, basically.
We've seen for a long time that's the case, that like not even when it was official where channels like TBS and TNT decided to stop producing it, but even when it wasn't official, they were getting the cast-offs, which was never a good. Like it's been a long time since I can think, besides FX, which is a outlier in a lot of ways, and even FX, a lot of their stuff that's that they've been producing recently that's been really good has been FX on Hulu, which has been straight to streaming, has never actually showed up on anybody's TV. So even as a cable channel, they've adapted in a lot of ways. But it's been a long time since there's been a show on standard cable television that has been, I think, worth watching. I mean, with the end of Killing Eve, that was on AMC, but that's 5 years old at this point. I like Snowpiercer, but Snowpiercer is like, you would hardly call that prestige television. I think.
Yeah. So I think Snowpiercer sits in such that weird area where I'm like, if this just had a budget, I think it would be considered prestige television, but it looks just it's just like in that weird little bubble area that I feel like, I think even we were commenting on when Snowpiercer started, it's like, this doesn't feel like why is this show on TNT? Right. And I guess it's kind of part of it. It's just
that's the thing. It's like these cast off things. They get no budget. They get no stars. I mean, I love Daveed Diggs, but it's hard to argue that a show like Snowpiercer, which besides Daveed Diggs, there's really no. I mean, and I'm blanking on his name. Sean Bean.
And I'm sorry, what was the main actress's name as well?
Oh yeah.
She was the draw though. It wasn't Daveed
Jennifer
Diggs.
Conley.
Jennifer Conley.
Do you think Jennifer Conley's still a draw?
That was no, but I'm saying like when they were pushing the show, it was her face everywhere. Like that's where she was like the number one build. She was the person people were like pushing more than Daveed Diggs. No one really knew fucking Daveed Diggs besides like maybe one or two things and him being in Hamilton.
Right, but just for reference, the cast of Winning Time on HBO, produced by the same company. We've got John C. Reilly, Jason Clarke, Adrian Brody, Jason Segel, Wood Harris, Gillian Jacobs in like a cameo, basically. Sally Fields, Rob Morgan, not to mention a bunch of new faces from Quincy Isaiah, Solomon Hughes, and Sean Patrick Small, who I don't know if he hates Larry Bird or they like told him you have to be the most loathsome human being on planet Earth when you're playing Larry Bird, but he really went for it. He's like, I I don't like Larry Bird. I'm not like a Larry Bird fan. I don't think Larry Bird's like a villain. Like, have you seen the Winning Time episode where they go to Boston?
No, I'm a bit behind, honestly.
He is true shithead. It basically goes up to the line of him saying the N-word to Magic Johnson. Not as it's not like racist, but he's like, they're really painting him like he's the villain of the show. Which I guess obviously if the show is about the Lakers,
I get that. I get like you're supposed to make them, yeah, but like there's like.
But you just see like. I think we talked about this before. There's so much TV right now that's being concurrently produced that I just don't know. There's not enough talented writers and directors to make good TV at this rate that channels need, and that's why you get a lot of shows that end up falling by the wayside, because there's like this edict by any number of streaming platforms that we need some catch-all. Like, what was the number of Anna Kendrick launched streaming platforms, basically? Like, Quibi launched with an Anna Kendrick show. HBO Max actually launched with an Anna Kendrick show. It was like really Love good. Life. I liked it. The second season's even better, honestly.
But she's not in that one, is she?
No. It's my boy from
yeah, it's a different person.
Good
entirely.
Place.
Yeah.
Whose name I'm also blanking on. Oh, William Jackson Harper. So, but yeah, she was in the first season that launched with HBO Max, basically. I think that we are reaching a point where, now I think there are a lot of people who have predicted this, and this is just will never happen. I don't see why it would. That we'll get to the point where we'll be like cyclical, where it's going to turn into streaming packages that'll look just like cable. Like you'll pay somebody, be it Netflix or a third party, like $40 a month, and you'll get Netflix, Hulu, Disney Plus, AMC Plus, whatever, in a bundle. I don't see that ever happening.
No, I don't think so either.
What I think will happen is there will be a lot in the next coming years, or maybe really just this year, there's going to be a lot of mergers. I think a lot of companies are going to get bought the fuck up.
I mean, look, I mean, this is kind of the start. The conversation started with kind of like becoming like a full circle thing. It's just like Discovery Plus had its own thing, and now it's all just like, we're all like this. Discovery now bought Warner Brothers, which I still didn't know that was possible.
Yeah, well, Discovery's like,
I didn't know Discovery made.
Massive.
I didn't know Discovery made that much fucking money to buy Warner Brothers.
And actually, I think Warner Brothers, obviously before this, owned by AT&T, who anybody who's ever watched John Oliver will be well familiar with that fact. He insults them every week he can. That merger never made any sense, but the Disney Plus and HBO Max merger makes a lot of sense because Discovery Plus has this vault of content that's like evergreen, wholly bingeable, rewatchable stuff, like, I don't know, House Hunters and alien invasion shit, and like stuff that people will just throw on the background, and you can pack your streaming platform with it, so it looks like you have a million shows. It's the same sort of thing that Netflix does, where they just have lots and lots of stuff, so that when you're scrolling, you're like, oh, Netflix is jam-packed with stuff you're never going to watch, probably.
No.
But, and then on the other side, you have HBO Max, which will every month pretty reliably produce you something that's really quality and really headline grabbing. And I think that's where the merger can be really successful, is like HBO Max compared to Netflix. I think for a lot of people, not for either of us, I think we both prefer HBO Max as a platform at the moment.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of people
I watch more shit from HBO Max, I think, than like Netflix. I don't think the last time I cannot remember the last time I actually watched something on it besides Ultimatum, which I kind of only watched because it's such a fucking shit show of a television show. But besides that, I can't remember like tuning in Netflix and being like, I gotta watch something on Netflix.
When award season comes around and it's time to like watch their award season movies, like The Lost Daughter or like Roma that we talked about, that's when I boot up Netflix. But other than that, I don't really go on. But the difference is for a lot of people is like the amount of content, and that's where Discovery Plus. I keep doing that. Discovery Plus will pad out the content of HBO Max, who still has like an insane catalog of TV shows, the back catalog, obviously, not to mention all the classic movies they have, because Warner Brothers has TCM and Warner Brothers catalog on there. I think they are poised, and this is I think the move we talked about this before when Disney Plus came out and they didn't immediately consolidate all their shit. I think Discovery Warner Brothers, whatever they're called now, has made the call that they're going to consolidate so they can win this streaming war.
Yeah, I think you're right.
While Disney, I think, is really shooting themselves in the foot by being spread out over currently 3 major platforms.
I don't know how long that's going to last.
Plus.
I don't think that's going to last forever. I think there's going to be a point where they're just going to combine it into one big old thing.
And Disney reminds me a lot of Nintendo, where they're shooting themselves in the foot off of like weird, like not even morals, but like I don't even know what the word is, like image perception. Like they won't put shows that are like TVMA.
Well, they finally Hulu. They finally broke with that though.
Yeah,
I mean, they finally broke with that. So I think that might also be a shift in things though. But besides that, Disney sucks because of their homophobia. Let's go into break though.
What?
I need a reason. Don't say money. Why do this?
Why not do it? Because yesterday I walked out of the joint after losing 4 years of my life, and you're cold decking Teen Beat cover boys. Because the house always wins. Play long enough, you never change the stakes, the house takes you. Unless, when that perfect hand comes along, you bet big, and then you take the house.
Been practicing this speech, haven't
A
you?
little bit. Did I rush it? Felt like I rushed it.
No, it's good. I liked it. Team beat thing was harsh. I wonder what Ruben will say.
And we're back.
What's up?
All right, first up, we have the first episode of the Chitwell Ejiofor, Naomi Harris sci-fi fantasy. Sci-fi, I guess.
It's sci-fi.
Yeah.
I think that's what we classify aliens as, sci-fi.
Sci-fi comedy drama, way funnier.
This is not
than I
a
was
comedy.
expecting.
This is
What?
not a comedy.
This show is hilarious. What are you talking
The show
about?
is fucking weird. I would not classify the show as a comedy.
It's a comedy drama.
It's like it's a serious Resident Alien. That's what this is. It's a serious Resident Alien.
I think this show is funnier than Resident
I
Evil.
did not find this show funny whatsoever.
Ejiofor is going for it.
He is, but
possible.
I thought it was. I just didn't really find it like funny in a sense. I get like it's more like I don't know. I think it's just like comparatively to Resident Alien, which is a very unfair thing. Which is like this is like kind of like watching James Bond from going like immediately from Austin Powers, like old James Bond, not like Daniel Craig, like the Pierce Brosnan James Bond.
Wait, which one's James Bond? This is James Bond?
This is James Bond.
Okay.
And Resident Alien's Austin Powers in this metaphor that I'm going for.
And which do you prefer?
I like them both. I didn't say one or the other. I just
see.
don't think this is funny. I don't think this is. I would not classify this as a comedy.
We disagree very much on that. I think this show is. I mean, obviously has some pretty serious moments. Naomi Harris's character, in particular, but I don't know how you can't find like Ejiofor being like.
I think
like learning to speak. The police station scene is fucking hilarious.
I think I've just seen this too much.
Where
I think
have
that's
you
what
seen
it
this
is.
before?
I feel like I feel like I've seen the whole like robot or whatever trying to like adapt to humanity kind of situation so many times, and I'm like it's hard for me to pull it off the top of my head, but I feel like I've just seen this trope happen before that I was just like, this isn't like funny to me. It's like I was more interested because I thought the whole him starting with a TED Talk situation. And then we're going to this, and I'm like, I'm excited to see how this is going to build up. But to me, this first episode, I was like, let's just kind of get the shit over with. Like, let me kind of get a bit more into the whole meat and potatoes of what this show is going to be, rather than me watching the whole, like, him figure out how to be human thing. And I was just kind of like, yeah, this is fine. And I'm not saying that Chitwell isn't acting his ass off, and it's not, like, entertaining. It was just kind of like, yeah, you know, like, yada, 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 let's get this ball rolling. Kind of situation, because everything was like, this is weird, but kind of getting undercut with like, this is kind of like serious kind of situation. Never really let me get the ball rolling for me to be like, haha. It was just so like back and forth. That's just, I don't know.
I think we basically couldn't have had two more opposite reactions to this first episode.
I didn't enjoy it.
No, but I think the thing that I liked most about this is him like learning to be human. He like shoves a hose all the way down his throat. And the thing I'm very worried after watching this season of The Man Who Fell to Earth, because Showtime notoriously is like decent first episode, and then falls off a fucking cliff. The most recent example of that is that Bryan Cranston show where he's like a judge whose son runs a guy.
You did talk about that at one point on the show, yeah.
It gets like, it's like starts off pretty interesting. You're like, oh, okay. I sort of get where the show's trying to do. It's like trying to be really smart about race and power and what that looks like, especially in like a really corrupt town like New Orleans. And then as the show went on, it just got progressively worse and worse and worse because it just gets more and more busy. And on this season preview at the end of The Man Who Fell to Earth looks very busy. Now I'm going to try to withhold judgment because obviously I haven't seen any of that yet. I think this first episode, if it was literally just Chiwetel Ejiofor screaming fuck at people and Naomi Harris hanging out in her truck, I think this would have been one of my favorite episodes of TV I've seen in a long time. Everything else in here, I don't care about them saving the world. Maybe that'll become more interesting as it goes on.
I like the
Bill Nighy's character
is David Bowie.
But like, so
did you ever see the original?
The original what?
The Man Who Fell from Earth.
No.
Oh, I kind of I saw the original like weirdly like back in high school. I kind of barely remember it now. And then it was like when he popped up, I'm like, oh,
I honestly didn't even realize this was a movie.
David Bowie's character is like the main character in that, but it follows a very similar thing where this guy who he doesn't start like this. He's just already like a tech guy or like a millionaire, and then he gets found out to be an alien, and then through movie shit he becomes an alcoholic. So when he popped up, I'm like, oh, I guess we're just gonna continue this. This is a continuation. I didn't know it was going to be a sequel, so I was like pleasantly surprised in that capacity. Which is when it got to that point, I was like, oh, now I'm interested for it. And also, I'm like, I like Bill Nighy, and also I guess that would be.
I like Bill Nighy a lot.
I just kind of like,
don't know if I give a shit about his character.
Well, I think it's this whole like him doing a David Bowie impression is kind of something that it's kind of hard.
I didn't realize.
What's his character though? He just shows up and is drunk and he yells at him for a second. It's not really like there's much of a character.
Well, he's like he's the first one.
He's the first alien. Yeah.
I guess I should watch the movie so I have some context, but I didn't realize. So it's by Nicholas Roeg, who did Walkabout, another movie that I have feelings about.
I'm not saying The Man Who Fell from Earth is a good movie. Let's just put that out there. I'm not saying it's a good film. I'm just saying it is a movie that I watched, and I like David Bowie being weird, so I was like, this is
fair.
Apparently, he was just on cocaine the entire time, which explains a lot of it. But there's
a lot of just David Bowie in general.
David Bowie fucking rocks.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think like it's funny. I think I like it for the reasons, like the opposite reasons of you. It was just, I mean, it's really fun to see Chiwetel like run around and do that kind of. It's fun to see actors do that kind of thing, like the whole like weird like this like let's just see this actor act like a fucking alien, like kind of like Prometheus with Michael Fassbender. This is just like they're just like acting not normal.
Well, this is very different. The Prometheus Fassbender performance
different.
Is like so devoid of humor, which is why I hate it so much. He fiddles his own flute.
Yeah, why is it? That's not funny to you?
But they're not in on the joke at all. The show is clearly in on the joke, which I think is really fun.
Yeah, I don't know. I just didn't really find it.
Ridley Scott in Prometheus like has no sense of what.
Michael Fassbender. I'm not saying it's funny. I'm just saying I like this. I like this kind of thing. I just feel like I've seen this thing before. And I'm not saying it's like a bad thing. And I'm not saying this is a bad version of it. I'm just saying
I'm shocked to hear. Because I basically haven't seen anything quite like the Chiwetel Ejiofor performance is like so fun. I'm so into it. And it's like a cheat code to just have two incredible actors. I do think it's funny that they flew both these people from like they grew up an hour away from each other in London, and they flew these fucking people to bumfuck nowhere, New Mexico, to shoot this show. But yeah,
I liked it. I liked the first episode though. I'm like excited to continue watching it. It's just I don't know. It was just like I think it's funny. I mean, I don't know. It's just like I guess I wish I could like. I thought this through better before we sat down into the podcast because I can definitely have examples to come back later on. But oh man, I'm sorry. I wish I had a better example of this.
I do think the storytelling choice to go back and forth between where we see him end up and the beginning is very interesting. I kind of regret watching on this season because you get a lot of hints.
And I didn't see on the season.
Yeah, you get a lot of spoilers that I kind of wish I hadn't watched about like what's going to be happening as far as their mission to save the world. Rob Delaney is going to show up apparently, and he's going to be a big part of it. I love Rob Delaney, but again, this is classic Showtime shit where like they have a really good idea and they just throw more and more stuff at it until it becomes meaningless. Like the Joseph Gordon-Levitt show, Super Pumped, that just ended, is like probably should have been really fun and interesting, and instead is like this cacophony of familiar faces every episode. You're like, oh, here's this guy you sort of know playing this guy you sort of heard of, and it loses all sense of what it is. And then at the end, tries to so hard to lecture you into what the show was about without having the show been about that at all, which is what I'm sort of worried about, because I think this show is going to try a lot of interesting stuff.
Oh, absolutely. It's definitely going to go. It's definitely leading into the whole very interstellar kind of end of it, which I mean, I do like necessarily the upcoming future being treated as what it actually is, which is horrifying. Yeah. Because I always like that as like a backdrop, but yeah.
Weird change of pace from Alex Kurtman, who is probably most famous for bringing us the Star Trek Discovery TV show and the Mummy movie. Not
the good one.
Yeah.
Got it.
The Mummy movie. Although this is his first foray into like basically full-time show creation. He directed an episode of Star Trek Discovery and a movie called People Like Us that I also have never heard of, but stars Chris Pine and Elizabeth Banks and Michelle Pfeiffer. What fucking movie is this?
That's
came out in 2012 apparently. I've never heard of this. Why does it have so many famous people in it?
But I think like I want to keep an eye on the show though and possibly come back to it though.
The show's I enjoyed the first episode, and like I said, it's just a cheat code to have. Most shows should just be this. We talked about this before, how like I think the most important person in a movie is the director. The most important person in a TV show is your stars, because you just spend so much time with them. You're going to spend 6 to 10 hours with these people. They need to be good at their craft. And Naomi Harris and Chiwetel Ejiofor are maybe two of the best living actors. So I just think it's like, no matter how bad this show gets, which I don't think it's going to get bad. I just am a little worried. But even if the show gets really bad plot and writing wise, I'm not that worried, because we've got two anchor points that are just going to be fantastic. And
I'm excited. No, I'm excited to see the journey from that to him. People like clapping their like asses off at like him being this TED talk. He's like, I'm a fucking alien.
Do you think it's intentional that he's like this Elon Musk-esque figure?
Very much so.
Clear cult following.
Very much so. Yeah. I think the whole like him forming his own religion basically is definitely going to be a big part about it.
Yeah, Elon Musk, who pledged to give money to who was it? The UN, if they mapped out a plan to end world hunger, and they did. And he said psych, and then bought Twitter for $42 million. All
right, but I don't want to talk about him anymore because I want to get mad. Let's move on to comics.
You're not gonna get mad about these comics? I'm gonna get a little mad about one of them, I have to admit, because I'm just disappointed.
I mean, I think I got to start off with so the first one we're talking about is a 5-issue miniseries, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: The Last Ronin. The basic gist of this is one of those future comics where all the other Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles had died except for one of them, and the last one alive is on his basic revenge mission to avenge his family.
So can I ask you? So you've read more Teenage Mutant Turtle books than I have. I've read one other one besides this.
I read a little bit of. I read one of. There's a pretty popular IDW run. I think I read about 20 issues of it, which I thought it was pretty well written.
Is this like a classic TMNT setup? Like all the turtles besides one are dead?
This is the first time they've done it. I think that was kind of like this is. I think this is very like Elseworlds type of deal. So I think this was like I think that's what kind of the draw was. The draw for it was like this is a very like gritty, hard like we're gonna finally do like an R-rated Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles like story basically.
And this isn't really important to like the comic or the episode, but do you understand the ownership rights of Teenage Mutant Turtles vis-a-vis like DC versus IDW?
It's IDW. It's not. They're not owned by DC. It was just like
There's a lot of crossover stuff.
It was just a crossover. I don't actually understand the logistics of how that worked out, but yeah, it was just like an agreement that they let the properties mix together.
It's interesting.
Yeah, I don't actually know why that worked out the way it did.
Is because the TMNT movies are not Warner Bros.
Nickelodeon.
Right? They're Nickelodeon. Okay. All right. Either way, like I said, it's not really important, but I was thinking about it. I was reading this because when I first picked, when you added it to the rundown and I first went to go pick it up, I looked like through the DC catalog and I just assumed it would be a DC book. And then
No, it's not DC. You know, they've always been they're IDW, and I think like the reason they can cross over is just because it's not Marvel, and it's like DC and Marvel can't mix now because it
they
just like
used to in the past, and it was so fun.
There was a crossover, but apparently there was like this weird pissing contest between the editors, and now they're both such monoliths that they can't do this anymore without like.
I just think of how much money they would make if they released like a Hulk versus Superman book.
I think it's too
Thor
small.
versus Superman book.
I think you got to just do a whole like Justice League Avengers.
Justice League versus
crossover.
Avengers.
I think you got to do. I think you got to bring that shit back. Honestly,
Who would write that? Who would you have to have write that?
That's a difficult question.
It has to be King, right?
No.
You got a bad taste in your mouth.
No. Come on. No. Che, come on. He does character-driven stuff, not teen books. No. Absolutely not.
Who would it be?
Fucking off the top of my head, I don't fucking know. I mean, my fucking dream is Grant Morrison, probably. But
well, Grant Morrison's officially done with DC.
I think that probably. I think that could bring.
They said we're good on.
Yeah, DC. Whatever. My ass. But I think they definitely. I think they would come back if somebody. I have to imagine it's every writer's like, I would love to do this.
Would you though? It's like it's sort of like directing the next Spider-Man movie, right? It's like sort of a thankless job. Like, can you?
I don't know.
You don't think it's quite like that?
No, I think comic books are different though. I think it's just kind of like you want. It's like come on, everyone wants to play the sandbox.
Sure, but I think there's a reason we haven't gotten Civil War 3.
Well, no, because Civil War 2 was so bad.
But that's my point. It's like if it goes
War,
bad, you can ruin it for everybody.
Well, Civil War 2 was a company mandate for sure. I mean, it came out around the movie. There's no way someone was like, I want to make Civil War 2.
I think Bendis might have said
I don't think so. Because, I mean, like, there wouldn't have been a Civil War 2 if there wasn't the Captain America Civil War movie.
Bendis also did say, I want to write Joy Operations.
Bendis also has not written something good in the last 10 years. So
it's crazy. But yeah, let's talk about Last Word.
I mean, the reason I wanted to... So this book has been taking a long time to come out. I think it's been basically a year. And I remember being really excited for this when it was first announced. And because I never really read like much of them. And I just like know it's a lot of like... They have a lot of backing, a lot of inspiration for like the 80s Frank Miller. They're like that weird... Like it's such like... They were like a spoof from the Frank Miller Daredevil era. And then like made all its way there, a lot of great like comics that have like come with it. And I thought it would just be a very fun like Elseworlds kind of thing to be like gritty, blah blah blah. And I thought the first issue was really well done. I kind of recommend at least the first issue. If you like that, I kind of think you should check it out and keep going because I thought they do a really good job of like establishing the mystery of like who's the last one that's alive, basically. But I think at the end of it, when we go follow the last Ninja Turtle through this whole like futuristic, like everything's shitty apocalyptic world, I kind of
interesting world they've created though, I have to say.
Yeah, and
I would love to have spent more time in this world if it was written differently. I think.
Yeah, I think that was I just don't think it was necessarily I thought it was a really good concept. I just don't think they really figured out what they wanted to do with it because I didn't really know what the message they were trying to go for because it kind of felt like it was a bit back and forth, and I want to kind of talk about it just very like large because I don't think there's really necessarily a point to go over the story of this.
I think this happens. I find this happens with comic book miniseries a lot, where issue 1 seems like they probably had a really good concept and they banged out a really strong first issue, and then they were like, okay, I need to find an end point for my strong concept in 4 to 10 issues, and a lot of times they just don't land. And we end up, because it's just more fun to talk about good stuff on here than bad stuff, but I read a lot more shit comics than I do good comics. They just don't end up making the cut. And I think a lot more, this is not shit, I don't think.
I don't want to say this is a bad comic. I just think I think it's a very mediocre comic. Which
I think it squanders a really cool idea.
And I remember one of the things I was also very excited for getting into it was the fact that Kevin Eastman, who was the creator of the Turtles, was like the head writer on it. Yeah. So I kind of went into it being like, oh shit, this is like the story that he like. It's like one of the things like I feel like this would be like the final story that like an author would want to tell surrounding their characters.
Yeah.
And I think like maybe, and I don't even know if it's like if I kind of missing something without reading all the other comics because I mean, I probably know as much as you do, Che. I mean, I saw the movies and I know like April.
Could this really be canon though?
I think it is. I think that's the whole like kind of like point of it. I think there's a lot of like we just kind of picked a point and then jumped ahead as a thing. But yeah, I just kind of thought it was okay. And and we don't really do ranking things, but I think it was like a solid 6 out of 10. I'm not really mad I read it. It's just kind of from the concept, and I thought the art was also really good too. And I like the way they did flashbacks as well. But
I think there are moments that are really beautifully colored, especially in this book.
And I think like the final moments of people dying were also kind of cool too. I just kind of thought it was fine. That's all. I just thought it was like fine.
Yeah. Since you shouted out Kevin Eastman, who you said is the head writer on this, also worth shouting out Peter Laird and Tom Waltz, who were also credited a story on this. Kevin Eastman does the layouts and the pencil and ink by Esau and Isaac Escorza.
I think it's like a lot of like original people coming back to do it. It's just kind of like, yeah, thought it was fine.
Yeah, I would say if you're like a big Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles fan, check this out. Otherwise, I think that's fair. Give it a miss. You think that's fair? I think that's
really fair. I think if you like the Turtles as like a concept, like a thing, I think you would enjoy the story. I'm not saying I don't know. I just kind of felt like it was a bit like a little bit of a flat ending, but I enjoyed reading it. I probably would reread it again. Honestly, I thought it was fine. I just don't want to say that not everything you read is great, so that's fine.
Yeah,
it's fun.
That is sort of the rub with comic books in general, I think, is that more often than not, you're jumping in 2 feet with a lot of faith, hoping that this works out. And sometimes, like, there's a lot of books I picked up thinking, nah, this won't be great. Actually, I think a good example of that was A Writer's Thirst for Vengeance, one of my favorite books currently. I picked up the first issue being like, I like Rick Remender, but I never read anything by him that really like blew me out of the water. Usually he's like pretty solid. The cover and I always usually like flip through some of the preview pages on Image before I pick it up. I was like, looks interesting, but I'm not gonna like lose my mind. Like Deadly Class is another one we talked about before. Another one of his that was like fine. And then you just get we talked about that first issue, and I was like, shit, this might be like one of my favorite first issues of a comic book I've read in a really long time. And then sometimes you get stuff like this where it's like, good, but I'm not. But it's never like super exciting to be like,
Because I was like, it was like definitely one
hard
of my
6 out of 10 on this one, guys.
One of my more like excited getting in. Like I saw like the whole like I'm like, yo, this is gonna be like good. I remember reading the first couple pages on the preview. I'm like, I don't know why I was so excited for this. Like, but like it's like, hey, I finished it and I'm like, this was fine. But let's talk about a book that we mentioned this book. We talked about this book a few times, Che, but you want to kind of give a little bit of a lead in?
Yes. So this is the final issue, the 10-issue run of The Good Asian by Pornsak Pichetshote and art by Alexander Tefenki, Lee Lockridge, and Jeff Powell has come to an end. It is a real throwback to like classic noir cinema that I really loved that aspect of it. I think the like hard, like you used the word in the break, hard-boiled detective book is like really, I think, and it takes like this, these like Humphrey Bogart movies that you really be familiar with and flips it on its head and sets it in this place, San Francisco, Chinatown, with the backdrop of Chinese race relations, like Chinese race violence in the 1930s and 40s. And I would say for me at least, I don't want to speak for Corey, the first like 8 issues of this book I loved. I'm super into, I don't like the character, he's not likable, but I like the way he's written.
He's very unlikable, but I think I guess like we've been kind of spoiled with detective like stories in recent years where like we've gotten like to the point of making our detectives like likable, and it's kind of got used to that. And I mean, like I don't think there's anything wrong with this, and I think it's definitely was more of a thing back in the day. Because like, but I think like
Humphrey Bogart would walk into scenes and slap women all around the room.
It's just like now
just, like, cool back in the day. So
and nowadays it's just like, yo, this guy's kind of a dick, and I'm like, I don't really root for him. And you said 8 issues, and like I read the first volume, and I kind of jumped back in to read. I was actually wrong. I was 5 issues back, so I read 6 through 10 before we did this. And I was like, the fuck is happening? And it was like
that's a good.
And I was like, sorry. And even like on the recap at the very end, like the whole like this is the end of the mystery. I'm like, yeah, but what the fuck just happened? Kind of situation.
I think that's when I say the last 8 issues, it's when everything starts to get tied together, and you realize maybe Pichetshote like found himself with like too much stuff going on. He really introduced, by the time you get to the end of this book, there's like 10 character arcs being juggled in the air. And you're like, it's, you know what, the point that it hit me, and I was like, I don't know if he knows exactly how to land this plane, is the prologue of, is it issue 8? Yeah. In the first page of issue 8, what happens in every book of The Good Asian is we get like a recap where it's like, these are the characters that matter. This is what's going on with them. Edison Hark, who is our main character, along with some other key characters, usually get a little small blurb. There's a line that opens the 8th issue. Detective Edison Hark died looking for Ivy Chen. Not until the word died in the prologue of issue 8 did I realize that the end of issue 7, he was supposed to have died.
Yeah, they don't really even do a good job.
It's not clear at all.
Yeah, they don't do a good job of that. It's
And I remember thinking, if you're going to kill off your main character, which would have been a pretty bold move, I think, with 3 issues left to go, especially because he's kind of like the anchor point for the story. Like every arc just like goes through his storyline. It's kind of the point of him, is he flies over from Honolulu to San Francisco to set this ball in motion. If you're going to do it, you got to like sell it to us. And then of course it turns out by the end of the 8th issue, he's not dead.
Well, of course not. I didn't think he was fucking dead for a second.
Well, but if he's not dead, and you don't even, because the thing is, if you're going to fake kill off your character, make it a shock moment. And
agreed.
It's not even that. Like for people who are watching the YouTube video, which I'll plug really right now, if you're not watching the YouTube video, go over there, it's in the description. For people who are watching the YouTube video, I have up on the screen now the final page of the 7th issue. This is where we're supposed to realize that our main character is dead. Yes, he is surrounded by fire. It seems like he's in a lot of danger, but then when you turn the page and the book ends and you haven't actually watched your main character die, I think it's fair for the reader to assume, oh, he's going to get out, or we're at least going to see him get out or not get out at the beginning of the next episode. But yeah, I mean, there's like 12 characters, of which 2 of them, I think, storylines I was invested in by the end. And I think, and I love the art in this book. We talked about at the beginning how the art, I think, was really this sort of like simplicity, and the way he uses dark tones and everything really works. The one problem with the art in this is it's very simple, and because it's very simple, everybody's face is the same.
Yeah.
So like the only way to tell characters apart is like I can tell who's a man, who's a woman, and if you're white or Chinese because your hair color is different. And besides that, I don't know who's who.
Exactly, and they don't really give a consistent enough of like specific hairstyles or stuff like that. I mean, that's why comic book characters wear the same fucking clothes all the time.
Right.
But yeah, no, I think I also was very confused. I feel like I have to go back and read it all together. But even then, I'm like, when I hit the end of it, I'm like, what the fuck happened? And I was like, what? It was just like, what the fuck was the point of all this?
There's a pretty big monologue to close out the 10th issue, which is pretty standard for noir films, where you get the like whodunit explanation. But that's really key in this book because, like you said, Corey, you get to the 10th issue and you're just sort of lost. And I think Pichetshote has written a lot of like Infidel is great. If you haven't read Infidel, go pick up Infidel. That's kind of the book that launched him onto the scene. I kind of get what happened here, which I find this a lot when I write, and I'm not half the writer that Pichetshote is. Let's be very clear. I'm not claiming that. But I get really emotionally attached to my storylines, and I like refuse to delete shit. And I'm like, I have these 5 characters I really love, and I gotta really navigate their storyline from start to finish. And that's what happened here. He introduces like 5 or 6 characters I think he really loves. Edison Hark, Victoria Carraway, Frankie Carraway, Lucy Fan, Holly Chow. I'm probably missing some other ones, but we just don't have enough time in 10 issues.
Yeah.
To effectively navigate all those storylines, especially because Edison Hark's storyline is so not convoluted. Convoluted's a negative word, but complex. It's a really complex storyline that we're navigating. Very complex. Here. We get a lot of flashbacks to his childhood. We get a lot of weaving in and out of people that he met from the past, reconnecting with him in San Francisco when he gets back. He has suddenly this love story with his, let's be very clear, sister.
Yeah, that was like that was really clearly dropped over. I'm like, that's his half sister. Like to the point when I came back and I'm like, he's like, I kept on being like, he's not related to her because of they were making out. I'm like, wait, no, he's still that guy's son. It was.
Well, he's not his biological son though, is he?
I think he might be.
Oh, that's unclear though, right?
But that's what I'm fucking saying.
Yeah. I think either way, and this happens in TV and books and stuff a lot. As somebody who's never had an adopted sibling, maybe I'm off the mark, but I do think it would be weird to hook up with your adopted sibling, even if you weren't at all related to them.
I think that's very clear. I think that's very, very fair.
This is what I should say this. I love the first 6-7 issues of this book. And that's why I wanted to talk about the conclusion of it, because I do think there's a lot of parts of this that are really worthwhile exploring. If you love noir the way that I do, and I think the way that Cory does, there's a lot of really rewarding stuff, especially at the beginning. And maybe it's possible, because I've only read this once. Maybe it's possible I'll go back through and read it all together. And
I think I'm gonna go back and read it all through together. I think I
just don't know if that will help, but I hope it does. I hope on the second read through we can come back to this podcast and say we were both wrong and this was a masterpiece. I would love for this to be great.
At the end of the book though, where he was like, he will return again, I'm like, I don't really know if I give a shit to see him return again though. It's like, it's such a weird, like he wasn't a fun enough detective character for me to be like, I
think that's also hedging your bet, because I think this was actually a really successful book.
That's good.
I think part of that,
but I think the part of that successful part is a conversation that's had in the backdrop. Yes. Not necessarily. I think you got like the detective character is always very difficult to do. Mm-hmm. I just don't think this detective character ended the story in a better place.
But I think your point about the thing that's interesting, the most interesting about this book, is the way that Pichetshote explores racism against East Asian people. In this book, it's specifically Chinese Americans.
Yeah, that's very fair.
But I think that, I don't want to speak for everybody, but I would imagine that holds true for Koreans and Japanese Americans and even Southeast Asians and so on and so forth. A group that oftentimes in popular culture gets ignored for a lot of different reasons that we don't have time to go in on this podcast. But I do think that the conversations that this raises about the treatment of Asians in America around the beginning of the turn of the century, as well as, and that's the thing that's really sad about this book, is that this book is set 80 years in the past, and yet a lot of this looks really similar now. And it's no accident the first issue of The Good Asian came out really at the peak of coronavirus, when there was a real uptick in racially based crime, racially influenced crime against Asian Americans. I don't think that was very intentional, and the rage that the main character in this book has is
very warranted.
It's pointed too. It's pointed. It's very quite intentional. Which I actually think is probably the best part of this book, is that Pichetshote has like a really great grasp of how to write anger and this like simmering resentment in a way that lends itself to the narrative and doesn't feel distracting. Like sometimes when I read books that are just like really angry, or watch movies that are really rage based, my brain sort of shuts off. I'm like, I know you're mad, but I don't really want to be yelled at for an hour and a half. If that's okay with you.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about the ingenuity of 1930s plastic surgery, or should we just close out?
I think we should just close out.
They made him look great though. Shout outs to
that was my only thing. It's just like plastic surgery. I'm like, that's not how. As someone who knows people who are like burn victims, that's not how it works.
But also, why not just have him be scarred?
That's what I thought they were going to go for.
Yeah.
I don't know. All
right. What we're saying is, check out these two comic books if you're big into noir, if you're big into Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles,
or it's like a good samurai fighting thing. I kind of recommend Last Ronin. I like Usagi Yojimbo, and it kind of made me want to go read some more of that, honestly. Yeah. So,
but they're unlikely to blow you out of the water, or maybe they will. And if they do, and you really disagree with us, you can always share your thoughts at next time on. Really, I'm not opposed to a good discussion on Twitter. I just don't think it's capable of having a discussion. Please come prove me wrong. Tell us why this book is fantastic. I'd love to chat. But we're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to come back and talk about the penultimate episode of Moon Knight.
And by the way, I know it kills you, but guess what? There is no Danny's idea. Everything that comes in here belongs to the agency.
You mean you?
As long as you still work here.
Is that a threat? Because I've already taken somebody up on one of those tonight.
Relax.
You know what? Here's a blank piece of paper. Why don't you turn that into glow coat?
Are you out of your mind? You gave me 20 ideas, and I picked out one of them that was a kernel that became that commercial.
So you remember?
I do. It was something about a cowboy. Congratulations.
No, it was something about a kid locked in a closet because his mother was making him wait for the floor to dry, which is basically the whole commercial.
It's a kernel.
Which you changed just enough so that it was yours.
I changed it into a commercial. What, are we gonna shoot him in the dark in the closet? That's the way it works. There are no credits on commercials.
You got the Clio.
It's your job. I give you money, you give me ideas.
And you never say thank you.
That's what the money is for.
And we're back.
What's up?
We got to close this out pretty soon because Corey's got big moves to watch The Northman. Which
I cannot wait to see violence.
I really enjoy. We will talk about The Northman soon. But today we are talking about the penultimate episode of Moon Knight, which, and I'm just going to say this up top, is my favorite episode of any Marvel show thus far.
Wow.
I still think Loki's my favorite show, but this episode, I
Was
think it's
very
because
good.
it turns out if you just got two Oscar Isaacs, I'm gonna like everything.
It's
but-
so wild that like I forgot. Like it's just so weird that I'm like I forgot that it's basically the same actor playing against himself.
Right,
But he's so good at it. But
Yeah.
I remember you texted me. You were like, because Che hadn't seen the last two episodes, and you texted me like I'm worried about the asylum thing.
Yeah,
I'm
I
like,
watched them all this morning.
because I'm like, yeah, like I was very quickly. I'm like, I would be worried about that too. But it was just as soon as I start the next episode, I'm like, this is so clearly not
Yeah.
what they were going for. in
Yeah,
this
and you
sense.
made the point that like, and what I thought was happening when we first get to the asylum in the fourth episode is that they were going to string you along a little bit to be like, oh, is this in his head, or is this, is this whole thing been in his head or not? And of course, the reason that I didn't like that, like, I don't really have a problem with, is it real or is it in your head storylines in general. I think those can actually be really interesting. We
It's
talked
kind of
about
late into it, the series
Yeah.
to do it though.
we talked about that in relation to the book club.
Yeah.
Like in the book, that is the case where you end the book and you sort of don't know whether or not this has all been in Mark's head or not. If you haven't checked out that episode, go back and listen to that. Good time. But we know it's not going to happen because in the MCU, you then need Moon Knight to go on and be a hero and show up in your movies after that.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
It can't be the fact that like Mark Spector is
Yeah, just
just
like,
a guy in an
asylum.
asylum.
I don't-
Yeah. So that's why I was a little bit bothered by it. And then of course, like you said, they pretty immediately flipped to not the case. I love the appearance of, I should have looked up the god's name, the hippo god.
She was great. I was worried it was just gonna be like Anubis, and like Anubis is usually just like silent. So I'm like happy there was just like this very nice hippo
Great
god.
voice.
Yeah, great
Absolutely
voice. Just
fire. voice
absolutely
actor
the
for that.
perfect everything about her character, like
Yeah.
design and everything was like this is just. Also the CGI was also really well done. I'm like, oh, this is just like good.
So I didn't prep you for this question, but I was thinking about it a lot. Is this the worst parent we've ever seen in anything on the podcast? We have seen a lot of shit.
Okay. So I think the problem with this is the mental health aspect.
No, absolutely. She's a very sympathetic character in some ways, but even in your darkest moments of depression, you cannot yell at your child.
Yeah, no.
This
no,
is your fault when his
yes.
fucking brother died.
Yeah, no. I think if not, absolutely. I think
But I think that's the thing with all no parent that abuses their child is mentally healthy. It's
That's
all
very true. That's
because they suffer
very-
from some sort of mental disorder. And
I mean, like, the
whether
whole,
it be
like-
depression or something else.
the outcome or like the manifestation of his dissociative identity disorder made so much sense, but it also was one of the harshest.
Oh,
Like, well done as well for the kid, the child actor as well. But it was just like when you saw the switch in the creation of Steven, like the alternate personality as a way to escape this.
defense mechanism. It's
It
a
was
defense mechanism.
and like it was like a pretty much it was like that was horrifying, but also like, and I think like in a way like this episode too did such a good job of these two main characters that we had played by the same person who is technically the same person, which is so like kind of like a beautiful like bond to see these two characters like both understand and get to know each other, and like just kind of the progression of Mark as a character, who, in all honesty, we didn't really get a chance to like, spend too much time getting to know him in comparison with Steven. It does such a good job of being like, okay, this is actually our main character.
Do you think Steven's gone?
Not entirely.
No.
I don't know.
I will say I
hope not.
I hope
not, because he's Steven at a character I was like, I usually hate those like, oh, he's a cowardly character, but Steven grew on me so much, and he's just so like, and Oscar plays him so like.
I also think it's weird to say because obviously they're played by the same character. I really like, and in a lot of ways prefer, the relationship between Steven and Layla to Mark and Layla. I think the fact that he has been this sort of like, and again, there's so much smart stuff the show is doing, that the fact he's been this bridge to reconnect Mark and Layla in a way that is, of course, we see that because of this episode, we see the point of Steven is that he is this defense mechanism. He separates Mark from the world, but in doing that, he gets a chance to like connect with his wife, because he isn't burdened down with all of these horrible things that Mark has done. The room where he's walking through and he's seen all the people he's killed. That was
a very well done, very well composed, and very good idea.
Yeah.
As a way, you don't have to say a lot with it, and it's just also the good thing about Mark too. Is like he's not just a insane killer. He's like, do you remember? Like, yes, of course, I remember every single person. It's just like it's just like little things. Just like very show don't tell. This is the prime example of show don't tell. That like is good in storytelling like this, where we're getting this person's origin story basically, and it's such like the whole superpower aspect of it is like literally just like 30 seconds,
right? But
the whole like his backstory as a character is just so, it's just like they tell exactly what they want to tell with it, and they tell it at a great pace that is both entertaining but also just inherently sad, and then you get the end on fighting mummies, which is just also. Just a fun.
I love. You catch the throwaway line where he sees the three mummies and he says whatever because he noticed the people by locations, and he was like, oh, Dubai, Hong Kong, whatever. He like knows the three people that climb into the boat. He's like, oh, I know where I killed you at. It's just like really. It's just all this.
I didn't even pick that up either.
Yeah, he's like, hey, Dubai, hey, whatever. I don't remember what cities he says.
I did watch it in the daytime, so that seems a bit hard to watch.
It does get very dark.
Moon Knight gets very dark. It's like that episode of Game of Thrones. Like I need to be kind of in a dark room to be able to actually. Except this is much better, but
the cave scene, especially, gets quite dark.
I do plan to rewatch 4 and 5 before episode 6 comes out, just because of that. I need to be able to see everything.
What are you What are you expecting? / What are you hoping for episode 6?
I don't know.
I thought basically this entire time
we're
traveling through the memories, going back and forth, especially when we get in the room where we see all the people that Mark has killed. I really thought that's when we were going to get the reveal of who the third person is.
And
I'm assuming it's Jake, right? But
it has to be Jake. Yeah, like it has to be Jake. But I mean, there definitely is a. I don't think Steven's gone entirely, because I don't think Mark's like cured really of it, and I don't. Yeah, so I don't think. I think it'd be kind of a disservice as well, because I think we talked about the end of the Moon Knight book, the Jeff Lemire book. Like even though he like gets rid of him, I think they might actually play a lot with that same kind of mentality that like he doesn't really get rid of them. It's like something that he has to live with, and I think at least the show seems self-aware enough to be like, oh, like that's not how mental disorder like fixes itself basically. So I think Steven will be back for that reason. I think we're also definitely going to get Jake, but I don't know. There's a lot of like threads that they got to tie up in it, which is even more confusing to me. They're making this like a limited series, I guess. I don't know. I think so far the show
limited series of course is like a little bit, because we're going to see this character again.
Yeah, Moon Knight's not again. Yeah, we'll see Moon Knight again. So I'm wondering though, I'm excited because I really like this show. I'm just also like sad that it's like, oh, this is about to be over, kind of thing.
Yeah, part of me, this happens all the time, because I'm like, I love this show. I wish it would go on forever. Yeah. And then I have to catch myself and be like, the reason that like network TV shows end up being so shit is because they have to stretch out
for like 22 episodes,
10 hours of story maximum over 24 episodes.
Yeah.
And you just can't, and you have to like churn that out every year. It's just not capable. Nobody's capable of doing that at a level that will continue. And I have to remind myself, there's like 1,000 other shows that I need to watch. So like the fact that Moon Knight is 6 episodes is actually probably good in the grand scheme of like the streaming era. But I'm with you that I'm bummed it's ending.
Yeah, me too. And I mean, like, but at least we're getting like Doctor Strange as a way to like get me off this whole Marvel.
Well, Miss Marvel is Miss Marvel's when? Miss Marvel is June.
I think it's June. I mean, like, but I'm excited for that as well. But I can't think of two different superheroes that are so starkly different than Miss Marvel, the nice girl from Jersey City versus the murderer.
Miss Marvel's very similar to Stephen Grant, so
that's true. They're both very delightful. But yeah, no, I don't know where we're gonna go with this next episode, but
I think the things I would like to see resolved, obviously, who's the third person. I just would love to get at least a nod to the fact that it had, like, I think it's weird they didn't even address the fact that there is a third person in this episode at all. I thought they would at least hint at the fact that, like, when Steven sees the scene through the door where Mark is standing outside his mother's Shiva, I thought it sounded like Mark didn't really remember that scene either, and then it turns out obviously he does remember. He's just trying to.
I thought so too. I thought it was just like when he walked in, he just had no idea. But I guess like
I thought that was going to be a memory from the third guy. I would love to see them resolve that, and I really, I just want to know more about I don't even know what they called it, like the meetings of the gods. I want to go back there for at least a moment in the third, final episode.
That's what I'm saying. Like, I'm really hoping that there's like a lot to be like packed into it. I hope it doesn't. I hope they can stick the landing because they've done a great job these five episodes. I mean, like, I don't really want to compare. I mean, Loki still fucking rocks a lot.
I think Loki's still my favorite. It would take a pretty bang up episode.
Yeah, I mean, because also Loki's final episode, especially with the Jonathan Majors introduction, was just like so. Like, I mean, we kind of both were like, this might happen.
Yeah.
But like, I'm hoping that this next
and then it was
episode,
like more than we ever could have dreamed.
Oh, and it was amazing.
Yeah.
But yeah. I'm excited to talk about this next. I'm so excited to talk about this when we can talk about this. Also, Doctor Strange, Multiverse of Madness for sure. I love this. I think I'm really the Marvel TV experiment still working pretty good, pretty strongly.
Yeah. And I'll say it every time until I become officially a broken record. But the fact that these have been so successful and they've been so critically successful too, makes me even more annoyed that Eternals wasn't a TV show.
I think that's a fair note to end on, Che.
Yeah. Before we go, points of business as usual. Please, if you haven't already, go rate us 5 stars. If you're watching the YouTube channel, don't forget to like and subscribe. If you're not watching the YouTube channel, go over there, drop a subscription. We've got some YouTube exclusive videos planned coming soon, one of which involves Taskmaster, which will be coming near the end of this current ongoing season, which I'm absolutely loving. And once again, our Curse of the Rewatch coming up in 2 weeks is going to be Bulletproof Monk, and our book club, which is a big one this time. So you should probably go pick it up and start it now.
Yeah.
It's Monsters by Barry Windsor Smith. It's an excellent read. I think you will really enjoy it, but it is a big read. So, I think that's it for me. Anything else for the people, Corey?
Oh, nothing else from me.
All right, well, I've been Che.
I've been Corey.
We'll see you guys next time.